Hi, Professor. This is Stephen Andrzejewski. The article that I chose to do today is Major Grocers to Label Foods with Gene Modified Content. This is in congruence with Whole Foods as it relates to their tactic or implementation, rather, by 2018 to ensure that any food within their store that does indeed have a GMO product is labeled as such. Um, this is an especially big thing, especially since Prop 37 out in California was just most recently vetoed, which would have given California the state right to be able to ensure that any foods that were containing of GMO be labeled so the consumer could make a more educated decision on the food that they purchased. So, with that in mind, I wish to defend Whole Foods' decision to move forward with the labeling of GMO foods. Um, Again, genetically modified foods have been an extremely controversial topic since the introduction in the mid 1990s. Uh, Before we get too much into it, I just want to give a little background for people out there that may not know what genetically modified foods are. By definition, a genetically modified food or a GM food or a biotech food or genetically engineered food, however you wish to call it, are foods derived from genetically modified organisms, specifically genetically modified crops. GMO foods have had specific changes into their DNA by genetic engineering techniques. Some of these techniques include engineering corn crops with Bacillus thuringiensis, which is a pesticide, BT for short. And what is interesting about this is that it's not like the outside of the corn seed has, been dusted with some kind of pesticide. This pesticide, this BT, is directly ingrained into the composition of the corn itself. So as the corn grows, the BT is within the composition to help ensue that pests stay away from the corn. Um, other techniques that are being used are for soy crops, cotton crops, different herbicides, and various other chemicals that are used to reduce weed control and just other pests. And the main goal of these different strategies or attempts rather, is to ensure that you have a much larger crop size, and in some instances that they can grow in a much shorter time. So you have more food quicker with less waste. However, there's some questions that ensue from this. Um, there was some research done by a gentleman named Alex Jack. Alex Jack is a macrobiotic educator, a dietary consultant, a journalist, and an environmentalist. He went to the USDA and was able to pick up their charts, their food charts, their confirmation charts, and track back to about 1997 approximately. And he charted them from 1997 to 2007. And he was looking directly at the vitamin and mineral content of this food. And some of the results that he got back were quite interesting. For instance, basically what he came up with is looking at these charts from the time these genetically modified crops were first introduced around the 1994, 95, 96, 97 era, and followed them 10 years, that there was actually anywhere between a 25 to 50% decrease in vitamin and mineral content within these foods. That is significant. That is greatly significant. And it's directly in line with when these foods were starting to become genetically modified. The USDA, again, these were their charts directly from the USDA, although they did release them to this gentleman, Mr. Jack. They were reluctant to admit that these numbers were indeed correct when Alex Jack decided to go ahead and publish the material. But they did, reluctantly. He further goes on, basically, as Jack puts it, farmers are using these seeds to produce higher yields, but with possibly fewer nutrients. Some astonishing results that his research revealed was today you would have to eat twice as much broccoli to get the same mineral and vitamin content that you would have gotten from broccoli 10 years ago. Also, today you would have to eat 8 apples to get the same vitamin and mineral content that you would have gotten from one apple 10 years ago. And again, these numbers are coming right from the USDA charts. But vitamin and mineral losses are not of the only concern. In regards to GMO foods. For instance, Mark Hansen, a senior staff scientist at the Consumers Union, discusses an 18% increase in food allergies found amongst children between 1997 and 2007. Again, this is statistically significant. Again, especially since this is coming right from the introduction to, following right along. Hansen uses a great example of how it works. So, and I'm just going to try to summarize his example. Basically, he states that if a scientist or a researcher likes a specific quality of, let's say, a kiwi fruit, maybe a growth time or some other characteristics of that fruit, and they want to take that and they want to use it for a tomato. So they take that DNA strand from the kiwi fruit and they put it into the tomato. That tomato is further processed down into a pizza sauce, and somebody at the grocery store gets this pizza sauce, and the next thing you know, their child or themselves has an allergic reaction to this pizza sauce, and then all of a sudden they're saying, "Well, I'm allergic to pizza sauce," But here's the thing: what they didn't know is they're not necessarily allergic to the pizza sauce itself; they're allergic to maybe the kiwi. But unless the food itself is labeled as a GMO, they'll never have any idea that that was indeed the issue. So somebody could go through the rest of their life thinking that they're allergic to tomatoes, when indeed it wasn't the tomato at all. It was the kiwi. So I thought that was a great example of why, again, foods need to be labeled. Hansen basically concluded by stating, unless it's labeled, how do you know? You can't. Yeah, there really is no way. Peggy Lemieux, who's a corporate extension specialist in the plant and microbial biology department in Berkeley, California, states that GMO foods are good. She says there's no evidence out there to support that these foods are unsafe for you. However, in the same breath, she also states that these GMOs, these herbicides and pesticides and everything else, are causing great environmental concerns that we see right now today. So my question to you, Peggy, is if that's indeed true, if these foods and these sprays that we're putting directly on these foods are that bad for the environment, how is consuming them safe? Again, so I'm not a scientist, but that's, to me, basic common sense. Returning to the article at hand, as far as Whole Foods, there was there's a lady who chimed in, Karen Barta. She's a spokeswoman for Bio. It's a trade group that represents the biotech industry, and this is what she had to say about Whole Foods' new labeling implementation. The industry has always supported the voluntarily labeling of food for marketing reasons. Again, let me restate that. The industry has always supported the voluntary labeling of food for marketing reasons. To that I say, nice spin, Karen. She's basically accusing Whole Foods of launching this new program and employing this tactic to increase their sales. And by doing this, Karen is hoping to instill some doubt in the consumers' minds to balance this out. If I can refer back to the readings that we did in Trust Us, We're Experts, I would say that Karen right here is directly lobbying for lethargy. In other words, she's trying to place this doubt into the consumers' minds that, listen, GMO foods aren't bad. And I'm not going to come right out and say that Whole Foods is doing this to make money, but this is what they're doing. So I found that to be quite interesting. With all this in mind, I strongly believe that Whole Foods is on the right track. Whole Foods has even noticed, per their article, a 15% increase in sales of currently labeled food items that they stock. So this just goes to show you that the consumers out there want to know what they're eating. They want to know what they're consuming. And they have a right to know what they're consuming. So kudos to you, Whole Foods. You guys are, one of the first ones out there that are doing this right now, and really making a conscientious effort to ensure that consumers are knowledgeable, and that they are able to consume what they believe is safe to eat. So that's my argument. That's my discussion. It's been a great term. Thank you very much, Professor, and take care.